wealth, power and intrigue. In its midst, a child of privilege is born, destined for a life steeped in prestige and pomp. Born into the majestic House of Stuart, they entered the world on a cold December day in 1635, within the grand walls of St James's Palace. Rather than a graceful dance through the grand hallways of royalty, her life was destined to unfurl a saga of endurance, belief and sorrow, a narrative resonating through the ages. Daughter to Charles I and Henrietta Maria, she was heir to a royal lineage that bore the weight of an empire. Her birth was hailed with joy, her baptism graced by Archbishop William Laud himself. As a child, she navigated a web of political alliances and courtly rivalries that shaped the realm, even as they began to cast ominous shadows over her life. As the English Civil War ignited, the flames of conflict transformed her world. With the court torn asunder, the royal siblings found themselves under the stern gaze of Parliament, shifting from grandeur to restraint, from the extravagance of royalty to the bleakness of captivity. This is the story of a princess whose life was shaped by the forces that broke her, yet could never erase her spirit. So join me now as we look back at the short and sad life of Elizabeth Stuart. In the frosty twilight of 28th of December 1635, within the regal confines of St James's Palace, a new royal life was kindled. Elizabeth, a princess by birth, entered the world. Just 5 days later, on a chilly January morning, she was christened by the Archbishop of Canterbury, William Laud, adding another line to the saga of the English royal family. In the subsequent year, the foreign whispers of matrimony started, making their way to the English court. Maria de' Medici, the matriarch of the House of Medici and Elizabeth's maternal grandmother, orchestrated a marriage proposal for the infant princess. The suitor was none other than the future William II of Orange. The English King Charles I bristled at the notion of marrying off an English princess to a Prince of Orange, considering it a step down for his royal lineage. Yet the threatening storm clouds of financial strain and political turmoil over his reign dictated a different course of action. Ultimately, Elizabeth's sister, Mary, Princess Royal, was sent across the sea, the pawn in this royal game of power and alliances. As the echoes of the English Civil War reverberated through the kingdom in 1642, the lives of the royal children, Elizabeth and her brother, the Duke of Gloucester, were steered by parliamentary winds. They found themselves under the guardianship of Parliament, their fates tied to the whims of multiple nobles, including Philip Herbert, the 4th Earl of Pembroke. The same year saw the Earl of Northumberland entrusted with their care. A fleeting visit from their brother James, the Duke of York, and future James II caused concern. Elizabeth, showcasing wisdom beyond her years, urged him to depart for fear of their adversaries. In 1643, at the tender age of 7, Elizabeth endured the pain of a broken leg. That year also witnessed a change in her and Henry's residence as they moved to Chelsea. Elizabeth's intellect blossomed. She was now fluent in Hebrew, Greek, Italian, Latin and French, and she impressed scholars with her penchant for religious studies. 1647 was a year of rare joy for Elizabeth and her brothers. Parliament granted them a brief 2-day reunion with their father, Charles I, in Maidenhead, and while Charles was housed at Hampton Court Palace, he visited his children under the Northumberland's care at Sion House. These visits stopped though when Charles sought refuge at Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight. Then Elizabeth, just 10 years old, cleverly aided her brother James in another daring escape, disguising him as a woman. The family lovingly dubbed Elizabeth Temperance, a testament to her gentle demeanour. She was a beacon of grace, dignity, intelligence and sensitivity, even at the tender age of 11, as noted by the French ambassador. However, her luminous personality belied her physical afflictions. A later examination of her remains revealed she had suffered from rickets, resulting in severe physical deformities that hindered her walking ability. Elizabeth's world came crashing down when Parliament decided to dismantle her household in 1648. Desperate, the 12-year-old princess penned an impassionate plea, begging the Lords to reconsider. Their sympathy towards Elizabeth's predicament led to the overturning of the decision, but their benevolence was not without conditions. The royal children were to be raised as strict Protestants, barred from joining the Oxford court, and virtually imprisoned at St James's Palace. At one juncture, Parliament even toyed with the idea of crowning Henry as a constitutional monarch, a potential replacement for the king. The year 1649 found Charles I trapped in the iron grip of his captors for the final time. Swift and unyielding Oliver Cromwell and his tribunal issued their damning verdict: death. Amidst this maelstrom, Elizabeth penned a desperate plea to Parliament, imploring them to let her join her sister Mary in the relative safety of Holland. But her appeal, however, was ignored, with Parliament postponing any response until after the execution. The cold dawn of 29th January 1649 brought with it a heart-wrenching farewell. 13-year-old Elizabeth and Henry found themselves face to face with their father for one last time. The memory of that meeting, both bitter and poignant, was immortalised by Elizabeth herself.
He expressed joy upon my arrival. Although our time was limited, he had words for me that he could not share with anyone else, or commit to paper, for he feared their barbarity would not allow him such liberty. He bid us to tell my mother that his thoughts had never strayed from her and that his love would be the same. He commanded me and my brother to be obedient to her, and bid me send his blessing to the rest of my brothers and sisters, with communications to all his friends. Then, taking my brother Henry on his knee, he said, "Sweetheart, now they will cut off thy father's head." And Henry, looking intently upon him, said again, "Heed, my child, what I say, they will cut off my head and perhaps make thee a king. But mark what I say. Thou must not be a king as long as thy brothers Charles and James live, for they will cut off your brothers' heads when they can catch them, and then it will be yours. And therefore I charge you, do not be made a king by them."
Tears welled up in Elizabeth's eyes so much that Charles I questioned whether she could retain his parting words. Making a solemn vow, she assured him that she would etch every word into her memory and even ink them down. True to her word, Elizabeth drafted 2 separate chronicles of the encounter. Charles I, ever the loving father, implored her not to lament or torment herself for his sake, and urged her to adhere to her Protestant faith. In the wake of Charles I's execution, Elizabeth and Henry found themselves as burdensome wards. Jocelyn, Lord Isle, the progeny of the Earl of Northumberland, sought to disentangle his family from caring for the royal children. He implored Parliament to relocate Elizabeth and Henry, but his plea was refused. Departure to Holland was not on the cards. Instead, Parliament consigned the children to the stewardship of Sir Edward Harrington. However, this arrangement was transient. With his compelling arguments and emotional appeals, Harrington's son effectively implored that Elizabeth and Henry be placed under the care of different custodians. Elizabeth and Henry's next dwelling was at Penshurst Place, where they were placed under the watchful eye of Robert Sidney, the 2nd Earl of Leicester, along with his wife Dorothy. The couple were issued a strict directive by Parliament, warning them against excessive pampering of the royal children. Parliament sternly cautioned the Sidneys against indulging the children excessively. But despite the official order, Dorothy Sidney showered Elizabeth with warmth and kindness that was deeply appreciated. In gratitude, Elizabeth gifted her a jewel from her precious assortment. Later, this unique token would ignite a dispute between Dorothy and the parliamentary commissioners tasked with administering the late monarch's estate. By 1650, a significant shift occurred when Elizabeth's brother, Charles II, now in title only, ventured to Scotland to claim his crown. Reacting to this, Parliament relocated Elizabeth to the Isle of Wight under the guardianship of Anthony Mildmay, allotting her an annual stipend of £3,000. Despite her protestations of ill health, her pleas fell on deaf ears, and the move was undertaken without any regard for her well-being. During her relocation to the Isle of Wight, Elizabeth fell victim to a chilling cold, which swiftly worsened into pneumonia. She tragically passed away on the 8th of September 1650 within the confines of Carisbrooke Castle. Accounts suggest that she was discovered lifeless with her head resting on her father's Bible. In her final days, those around her depicted her as a sorrowful child. Strikingly, merely 3 days post her demise, the Council of State approved her long-sought permission to join her sister Mary in the Netherlands. Elizabeth was laid to rest at St Thomas's Church in Newport on the Isle of Wight. Her gravestone bore only the modest initials E.S. in remembrance of Elizabeth Stuart. The tale of Elizabeth Stuart, a life woven with threads of melancholy and tragedy, is a poignant narrative in English history. Emerging into a life of regal opulence, Elizabeth's existence was drastically upended in her tender years when the realm spiralled into the turmoil of the English Civil War. The comfort of her princely upbringing gave way to uncertainty and restriction under the Parliament's watchful eyes. Against war and family loss, Elizabeth showed remarkable resilience and wisdom beyond her years. She became an unwavering beacon of faith and hope for her royal lineage in times of utter despair, especially during her last meeting with her father, Charles I, before his execution. Her life, though brief, left an indelible mark. Despite enduring pain and deprivation in her young years, Elizabeth touched the hearts of those who knew her, and centuries later, her story still resonates. Queen Victoria's tribute to Elizabeth's memory, an exquisitely carved marble sculpture, stands as a testament to the enduring legacy of this tragic yet inspiring princess. And ultimately, the tale of Elizabeth Stuart is a poignant reminder of the human ability to maintain grace and dignity, even in the face of profound adversity.